Hey guys, welcome back to 20s Decoded, the podcast where we discuss our personal experience in our 20s and help you navigate this super interesting period from a health, mindset, and work point of view. I'm Penelope and I'm joined by my co host Arjun.
Hey guys,
So, Arjun, did you do anything fun this weekend?
I actually went skiing this weekend. It's was 7 or 8 years since I've last been skiing, so I was feeling a state of anxiety right before skiing, but it ended up being a lot of fun. I skied a couple of greens, wasn't able to hit the blues just yet, but I really enjoyed my time skiing on the slopes. It's been a hot minute, and I do wanna revisit it again, hopefully later this year or eventually next
Yeah.
year. How about yourself,
Oh, what
Penelope?
did I? Oh, it was amazing. This weekend, I had this outdoor party in the afternoon on Saturday. It was
Uh-huh.
super sunny in SF, super warm. And so it was an outdoor party from like 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. So it was interesting. And me being a person who enjoys going to bed early in the day and early in the
Mhm.
evening, it's nice to have a party in the afternoon because it means that I can still go to bed at like 11 p.m. max. So it was great.
Glad to hear that. So, what are we discussing today, Penelope? What's like our podcast? What are listeners listening to today?
So I think that we want to discuss the topic of imposter syndrome because, when you're in your 20s, you try to do the best you can at your job. But very often, I feel that you can have those imposter thoughts just like coming along the way,
Mhm.
either at work or in your personal life. So maybe like sharing a little bit of our experience around that, as well as some exciting research that we've read and so on, and just share some quick tips about how to maybe handle those thoughts that you can have about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I feel like this is very common, especially for people that are coming out of college or going directly to their first job, right? You're making all this money. I mean, like this is the first time you're making money, and you're joined by peers and colleagues that are possibly been in the field from like either like newbies like us or people that have been working in the field for like 20, 30 years, right? So do you want to start off by giving like your definition of imposter syndrome and then I can give my own?
Yeah, sure. So
So like the view.
yeah, so for me, imposter syndrome is really about thinking that I'm gonna get uncovered, meaning that people are thinking that I'm way more able to do things than I actually am, that I'm not as talented as they think I am, and that at some point the bubble is gonna burst and it's gonna be really bad. So Arjun, what's your definition of imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is kind of like the state of, like for me at least, feeling like the state of anxiety and not like expecting success like experiencing success internally. It's like the state of being like feeling like you're like a fraud or like a place that you just don't feel like you belong, and then you kind of like are doubting your own abilities.
Yeah, I feel that. And that's actually very interesting what you just said because you mentioned this state of anxiety. But, for me,
Hmm.
I believe that this anxiety that you can experience is a lot due it's kind of a consequence of the thoughts that you have about being an imposter, so that then it runs again and again and again in your head, so that after that you have this anxiety, like crippling anxiety about the fact that you're gonna get uncovered. So for me it's more about like a consequence of the imposter syndrome as the imposter syndrome in itself.
I get what you mean. Can you just elaborate a little bit more into that and like what like in your own experiences, like what you've gone through? Can you elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, so I feel that so I read some research which basically say that 70% of people on average in the workforce experience imposter syndrome. It's huge. It's huge and it's very
Wow.
common, especially um, among high achievers. For instance, Einstein, which is the definition of a genius, had those imposter thoughts. So for me, it's like a lot linked to this willing to being willing to achieve more, to always push to push your boundaries and so on, which means that in order to push your boundaries you need to get like to be a little bit out of your comfort zone. And it's this exact moment when you can experience those imposter thoughts, because if you're a little bit out of your comfort zone but still trying to learn, you're still doing projects, you're doing the work that you want to do and that you need to do. But as you're learning, you can think, oh, people are going to discover that in fact I don't know how to do this and I don't know how to do that. And then it can run again in your head. And that's when you get this anxiety about, oh my god, I'm going to get uncovered.
Yeah, no. I feel like I've experienced this myself, at least in my first job, right? Like you're going in with the expectation that like, okay, like I'm new and I have to make my this great big impact out there. And like you are working with people, like I said before, like people that have been working in this field for 20 years. So like how do you feel like you would compete with them? Or not compete, work with them, right? They know so much and you like coming into the workspace, like you just don't know too as much as they do, right? And naturally over time, obviously, like with experience, you learn more and more. But like you're there, you're like, okay, I need to put my best foot forward, and I need to do all the work I can to impress these people. And like slowly and surely, like you start self doubting yourself. That like, okay, shoot, are they gonna find out that I really just don't know what the hell I'm doing here? And like will I get uncovered or unmasked, or even worse, like people like you might get like fired or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That's totally right. And that's actually funny because since the beginning of the podcast, we've been mentioning imposter syndrome. But so I read
Hmm.
some very interesting research from a woman called Basima Tewfik. She's a professor at MIT Sloan, and she did an
Hmm.
entire research about imposter syndrome, which in fact she calls imposter thoughts, because syndrome is basically something that is medically, when you say, oh, I have like I whatever syndrome, it comes from a doctor. Imposter syndrome is not something that you have a diagnosis about when you go see the doctor. It's something that is more like in your head, that is something that you experience, but it's not actually a syndrome. So that's why she mentions imposter thoughts. And so I find interesting this dimension of just like really seeing it as thoughts, because when you think about those, oh, I'm not good enough, people are going to uncover me, then it's on you to act on those thoughts and to
Hmm.
make it, just anxiety driven, or more, giving you more fuel in order to drive you to, I don't know, learn about a new topic that you feel that you're not entirely sure about, or just acquire new knowledge on whatever machine learning algorithm that you're going to use. So basically, you have those thoughts, and then you decide to work to act on it. Either it can be detrimental,
Hmm.
or it can be more a positive thing to have those thoughts. So I think that those are the two interesting aspects that we want to discuss in our podcast today, right?
Right, right. Fake it until you make it, right,
Yeah,
Canelo?
exactly. That's what we're doing with our podcast.
Really, honestly, guys, like we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're honestly faking until we make it. Like we're having fun. We're learning a lot about this, and we'll see where it
Yeah,
takes
doing
us.
interesting
But going,
research.
yeah, and seeing what the ways that we want to adapt our own lives, right? Like I feel like imposter syndrome is kind of like a good thing to like to basically expand your abilities, right? You may think that you're going down this like rabbit hole, or not even rabbit hole, like things that you don't know, but I think that's just what makes people successful at the same time, right? Picking up skills that people are know very well, but you may not know, but then you research, you learn those skills, and you become an expert in it as well in the
Yeah,
process of
yeah,
everything,
I
right?
completely agree. So maybe we can start by diving a little bit deeper into why it's often seen as a bad thing to have imposter syndrome, and then we can dive a little bit more on the positive aspect, on the imposter syndrome, and
Yeah.
maybe mentioning this research by Basima Tewfik, which is truly amazing.
Yeah, certainly. So where would you like to start off on like the negative or the cons behind imposter syndrome and like why it's so not so frowned upon, but like why is like gives us that fear of anxiety or self doubt or feeling of like
Yeah, just
phoniness?
maybe sharing some personal experiences. um so I feel that I'm somebody who is pretty prone to having those imposter thoughts, and even like at work, but in my personal life as well. I mean, when people tell me, "Oh, you're so good," I don't know, at like this type of thing for doing like, I don't know, machine learning or data analysis, I'm just like, no, I'm not. I'm just going on, I don't know, chat GPT, or I'm going on the internet in order to find the algorithms that I want to use. Not everything is in my head. And so it's actually a bad thing, because I mean, for me, it takes some time, it takes some time away for me to actually, oh, I have those thoughts for like 5 minutes. But if I don't quickly identify those thoughts, then it can last for like 1, 2 hours. And, you're not actually focused on what you're
Mhm.
doing then. So you just need to, I mean, I need to catch myself when I start having those thoughts and just say, okay, you can have those thoughts for 5 minutes. You put like this little alarm clock, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, in 5 minutes you're done, and you actually do what you know what you know you can do. But even if you don't believe in yourself, and 1 hour later I completed the tasks are completed, and I'm super happy with what I've done, and I definitely not an imposter. So it's just like, for me it's more about like the mental burden that's associated with having those thoughts, more than anything else. What about you?
Yeah, certainly. So I think even with my old job and my current job, like I used to be a statistical programmer, and in during at least my internship before I entered my full-time job, like I felt like I had some experience in the coding language that we had to use back then. And like people used to usually ran up to me and ask questions about this, and I was like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm like you, like searching on Google and searching these different resources and just like trying to trying to figure out the solution to the problem. And I kind of got into my head thinking that like, okay, if I have to if I'm being seen and perceived as this person, then I have to keep learning more and more and more, making sure that I do have answers to questions and whatnot. And even with this job right now, right, I'm not working as working in machine learning, but I am looking at data exploration and looking at different studies and stuff like that. And people are like, wow, how did you do this kind of stuff? And I'm like you, like I'm learning from other people, but then I'm also like doing my own research, and I'm like trying to figure it out as a way as I go. So like I love the technique that you actually had mentioned before, because I've never had like a tool to say, okay, stop these intrusive thoughts and get back to work. I usually delve deeper into it, and it usually like is a very big distraction for me, and it starts the thoughts getting into my head, and then it kind of makes me not procrastinate, but like actually fall behind in the work that I'm currently doing. So having that timer, which like you had mentioned before, is like a great way to stop us from delving deeper into these thoughts and putting away these thoughts and saying, okay, let's get back to work, let's get the work
Yeah.
done. So I really like that method that you had mentioned, and I will start incorporating it into my own
Yeah,
life.
you can go on Amazon to buy this ADHD alarm clock, $12, I think. We can put the link in the comments. But
But so
yeah, I
yeah, go
feel
ahead.
that another consequence of having those imposter thoughts is maybe about burnout. Because you mentioned that when you have those imposter thoughts, it's really great, because it means also that you have a growth mindset, that if you decide to act on it in a positive way, which is, okay, I have those thoughts, so then it means that I need to learn more. it will never be enough. You will always have those thoughts. And so it's gonna be, okay, I'm learning this thing, and then I'm learning this new thing, and then I'm learning this other new thing. But at some point, you're just like, it's a recipe to burn out. So just like trying to see exactly what you want to learn, is it aligned with your goals, either like from at work or from a personal standpoint, and just like acknowledging the fact that you cannot be an expert about every single thing. And it's very hard, especially if you have a growth mindset and you want to be super curious about everything and understand everything that you're doing super in depth. You cannot do it. You have 24 hours during the day. You're working during like between, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 9:30. Just like, and then you need to rest. You need to have some physical exercise, some physical movement. You just,
Some life outside of
yeah,
work.
there is a life outside of work. So just, I feel that it could be a second consequence of having those imposter thoughts, which is about burnout, especially when it's not aligned with your goals, but you still want to learn more because you're a people pleaser and you don't want people to uncover that that you're not competent enough.
You're absolutely right, right? A great thing like that, like my mentor had told me is right, like nobody knows everything, right? And it's just constantly a growing field out there. The field that we at least work in is constantly growing, and any industry that you work in is constantly growing, right? Nobody has the answers to everything, and that's completely okay. It's better to admit it to yourself and better to admit it to the people around you. You would say that you don't know, or like you will still constantly learn, right? But it's okay not to have all the answers, right? So it's better to, like you said before, accept the fact that you are accept the fact, and work from there, right? Don't burn yourself out by constantly working and studying to make yourself better and more knowledgeable in these fields, but to actually excel and thrive and ask questions as well at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I love what you just said about it's okay to say I don't know. Because,
Yeah.
I'm going to use the example of ChatGPT. We are mentioning a lot this thing about ChatGPT is hallucinating, it's really bad, just saying things that are not true, and so on. But I would be more comfortable knowing that ChatGPT, when it does not know what to answer, just answers, "I'm sorry, I don't know," rather than just trying to figure out an answer, even if it does not know. And I feel that it's something that I've been trying to do, which is when I don't know, I don't know. And that's okay. And you cannot know everything about everything. So just saying, I don't know, and then seeing how the people react on that, and maybe you will have to learn more about it, but maybe that's okay, and they were not actually expecting you to have an answer. It was more like a bonus point if you had the answer, but it does not mean that you need to learn about everything.
From your own experiences, Penelope, I would love to hear your perspective, right? You work on a lot of client deliverable items, right? So when you are working on that and you genuinely just don't have an answer, right, to give to your bosses or to give to the client, what do you say in that situation for working in such a fast paced environment?
Yeah, but to be honest, by the time I have the question, it's barely never in front of the client. It always comes up like in a team meeting to kind of prepare the client meeting and so on. So then it means that, yeah, if nobody else has the answer, and if I am the one who needs to come up with the answer, yes, I will learn about it. Yes, I will do the work that is necessary to learn about it. But it's never, and especially, in front of in front of a client, you prefer to say, "Oh, we are going to investigate it. Here is the plan in order to see what we can do," and so on. Just like detailing what the next steps are, rather than saying something that is not true.
Good to know, honestly, Penelope. I feel like I kind of like delve off topic a little bit with that question. So, kind of let's steer back to the imposter syndrome topic. And I know we were talking about the cons of imposter syndrome, but what are the pros of imposter syndrome? Like you,
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. Actually, it kind of relates to the research that I mentioned about Basima Tewfik. We're gonna link the research, but basically the goal of her research was to say, okay, there are two types of imposter syndrome. The first one is, oh, I'm a fraud, and it's only a matter of time before everybody finds out. In fact, this type of imposter syndrome is pretty rare. What's more common is those imposter thoughts, which is the I am I as good as other people think I am. It's not a matter of getting uncovered as it is something about, am I ready for the role that other people are encouraging me to take? And in fact, it stems for just facing some unfamiliar role or responsibilities when you get a little bit out of your comfort zone. But then it also has some very positive benefits, meaning that in the research that she does, so she looked at physicians and people working. It was in finance, and in fact, she found that those people with imposter thoughts were actually more interpersonally effective. They were rated higher for interpersonal skills because if there is like this gap between what other people think you're capable of and what you're actually doing, you want to actually turn to another domain in order to kind of make up for it. And usually it's the social interaction and relationship. So in the videos that she analyzed, she basically saw that those physicians with more imposter thoughts were nodding a little bit more in front of the patient, just like having more interpersonal skills, and that they were not in fact less necessarily less competent that the ones who did not have those imposter thoughts, but in fact they were rated higher, which then leads to the question, and I would be interested to have your opinion on that. Let's say if a manager has someone on their team who seems to have those imposter thoughts, what's the how could the manager handle that so that the employee is able to just perform at his best while having like a good mental health and without burning out on those just working more, working more, working more?
yeah, certainly. So I think if a manager wants to reduce the effect of imposter syndrome, I think you are as good as your team, the people that you surround yourself with. And if your manager gives people and resources to ask and to reach out to, this reduces the feeling and the emotion of imposter syndrome itself. Like you said before, right? The best thing about imposter syndrome is your interpersonal skills with whether it be patients or clients or even people on your genuine or general team. So like asking people questions, and this is a great way to actually get into the job itself. Especially like at least from my own experiences with my first job, I did not know what the hell I was doing as just as a statistical programmer. And the way I had learned and improved my own skills was by reaching out to people that had been working in this role for 5 to 10 years to teach me things that I did not know before. So by surrounding yourself with people that have been in the role a little bit longer, and they will serve as great teachers, mentors, and peers that you can rely on going forward. And these peers will help you succeed in getting the job done going forward. The whole point is to learn and to make yourself better. And by being given these resources, this is the best way to reduce imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's so I also listened to a podcast she was interviewed on, and she made a very interesting point with, since COVID, a lot of people are working remote. And so there are two scales on which maybe managers need to act on that, because let's say you have someone who comes regularly to the office, who can see her manager, who is surrounded by the team, so you can actually act on those interpersonal skills who make you feel more valuable, because even if you have those thoughts, you can see that people enjoy spending time with you, enjoy working with you, so it kind of, taper down those imposter thoughts. But what if you're working alone in your apartment every single day because of remote work? It can actually be an issue, and that's the a point that she's making in the podcast, which is, I feel, a very relevant point. I mean, as someone who is working remote, I feel that sometimes it's true. Sometimes I just need to have this Zoom meeting when I know that I'm gonna share something that I did and people are more likely gonna like it, and then it will stop some of the thoughts that I have. But for so many people, they are just working alone in their apartment, maybe at co-working spaces, but it's hard to catch those thoughts and handle them alone if you're working kind of siloed environment.
I think this is a very common thing. Like ever since the pandemic, a lot of people have been feeling this way. And like you, I was listening to a couple podcasts about this, and people actually this kind of led to not in just only like further imposter syndrome, right, and identifying it, but also depressive episodes as well, right? So, like you had mentioned before, right? Honestly, Zoom or like hopping on a video call is one of the best ways I personally feel to avoid that and to be able to interact with your colleagues at the same time. Maybe also working in a cafe or in a, unfortunately we work as bankrupt, but like kind of like in a WeWork space as well, to be able to work with young professionals, also trying to actually get the job done, but not to feel alone and kind of quote unquote siloed away. So personally, I think that's the best approach. I would love to hear your take if you from your own experiences to avoid it. Right, you've been using the timer a lot to identify or like to stop you to be able to allow you to have these intrusive thoughts. What else do you do to avoid that now that you've become fully remote?
Yeah, so I feel that the biggest trick is the timer. Then the second biggest trick is, what are you doing during those 5 minutes that you're allowing yourself to have those thoughts? In fact, I use those 5 minutes to actually come up with a plan. Just writing it down. And when I say writing it down, is with a pen, just like writing, not on your computer. Just, okay, I have these thoughts. Why? Okay, maybe it's someone who told me that I was not competent enough. Most of the time, it's not the case. It's just that you came up with this with this thought because maybe somebody told you that you need to investigate that a little bit more. But this person was not saying that you're not competent. This person was saying, oh, maybe you should look at this. So just like coming down to the root cause of why you're having those thoughts. Maybe it's nothing, and you just need to stop it. You do not have to act on it. You do not necessarily have to learn more about it. That's the first case. The second case, and I see it as a tree, really, just like you, you come down to the root, and then, okay, once I have the root, what can I do? Either you do nothing, or you say, okay, I need to learn about this topic, but I don't want to burn myself out. So, how much time do I have? And how can I break down this learning in tasks that are small enough so that it does not also just enter in collision with with the work that you're actually doing. So breaking down the tasks, seeing which resources you can have in order to learn more. But really the key is the time constraint. You do not want to go super deep into each topic that you feel that you're not competent enough, because you're going to spend your entire life learning. And even if you learn a little bit every day, you're still going to be way more knowledgeable than a lot of people. So you do not have to learn everything on a single day. So just really time constraint. Put like, I don't know, 30 minutes. Your manager told you to learn about this specific machine learning algorithm. You take 30 minutes, you learn about it. My point would be that after those 30 minutes, you write a LinkedIn article about it so that you're sure that you actually understand and people are gonna correct you if you're wrong, and then you're done.
I love what like you said before, right? Like the key is honestly to be able to set a specific time lock for yourself, right? Your manager or whoever's asking you to look more into this, right, is not expecting you to become an expert overnight. They're definitely not. They're definitely they want you to have like a basic understanding of this. And I love how you said to be able to write this down and then be able to write not like it doesn't have to be a LinkedIn article. You can honestly just write a synopsis of what you learned yourself. And writing down is the biggest thing to be able, biggest way to actually be able to memorize and to be able to actually learn the information that you've written or you've learned. So I really love that key advice. I know we're nearing time, Penelope. So like I guess we can just wrap it up and say like kind of like what were the key points that we discussed during this and what we've tried to uncover and show our fellow audience.
Yeah. So I think that the first key point would be about using the right name. It's not necessarily about imposter syndrome, it's more about imposter thoughts. And then once you have those imposter thoughts, seeing what you can do about it. It can be either a negative thing, as we've mentioned, that it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to burnout if you're trying to do too much, learning too much, and like kind of bridging the gap between what other people think that you're capable of and what you think you're capable of. So that's more a negative point of having these thoughts. But then we have also a very positive aspect of it, meaning that first you have a growth mindset. So you want to learn more. So you're actually going to get better and to get better day after day after day if you manage to keep it time constrained. That's the first point. Then the other point would be about the interpersonal skills that are usually a bit more developed when you tend to have those imposter thoughts because you try to make up for it in front of other people. So actually, it can be a positive outcome. Do you want to add anything to that?
I like to talk like what we just recently talked about, right? There are these these cons and pros and cons to imposter syndrome, right? Or imposter thoughts. But like the best way to combat these issues is like what you had mentioned before, having a timer, identifying, giving yourself time to think about giving your time self time to let yourself have these intrusive thoughts. But what is the best way to attack it and not make sure that you are diving so deeply into a topic where you become where you burn out yourself. So like I love the way you had said writing a synopsis and giving yourself an allotted time to be able to learn that skill. So I think that's the best way to attack imposter thoughts. And yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Thank you guys for listening to us today. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. And if you want to give us any advice on how we can get better or topics that you want us to discuss, just write us a message in the comment or just reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you want. But we appreciate your feedback.
yeah, we're faking it till you make it, till we make it. So please let us know any ways that we can improve our own podcasts. See you guys next
Bye.
week. Bye bye.